If you can state your name for the record, that would be great.
My name is Margie McGee Newton, and I'm the Director of Career Education in the Career Center.
So the first question is, how do you support disabled learners?
Okay, so in the Career Center, we offer one-on-one advising as well as asynchronous content and learning experiences, programming, and events. Now that, of course, are services and resources we offer for every DePaul student and alum. I would say that students with disabilities, often, if they disclose during an advising appointment, this is all about whether or not they're disclosing, we can provide one-on-one specific advice based on the industry they're targeting and based on the things that they and we identify as barriers, obstacles, or opportunities. So as an example, if we have a student who discloses neurodiversity and they're interested in technology, we can help connect them to recruitment that's focused on students with disabilities. And that, like I said, is often in a one-on-one capacity, and it is individualized. That being said, what we're doing this year is we are doing a lot more employer outreach through a partnership with Disability and Chicagoland. What we're trying to do is we can prep students, we can coach students all we want, but what we really need to do is help employers understand both how to successfully recruit a student with disability and then how to also support them. And also a little more education too, in terms of, why recruiting students with disabilities is beneficial as far as the larger workforce and environment. In addition, we're also building out some content for students with disabilities about how to disclose, when to disclose, why not to disclose, the pluses and minuses. So we created this career library that has a ton of micro learning, and we did intentionally create it so that it was scaffolded. And so different kinds of learners could access that material in different modalities. So we have like 90-second videos, we have 2-page handouts, we have slide decks, all of that. But the next layer of that library is to create content that is for specific audiences. So that library is really kind of a grab and go for almost any career readiness topic, but it doesn't have content around identity as much. And that's what the next layer is for this year. We're targeting, I think, about 15 new handouts specific to navigating identity, as well as navigating culture and fit in the workplace.
And the next question is, what tools do you have for the disabled learner to obtain an internship and job?
So we use Handshake as our jobs platform. So when I'm conferencing with a student, I'll often refer to Handshake as a great place to start. But in addition, obviously students who are seeking experiences, excuse me, can also target other types of job boards. We try and promote as well diversity-focused recruiting events. So for example, the government particularly does a lot of disability-specific recruiting, and we try and promote that by sharing content with the Center for Students with Disabilities. That relationship is actually growing. So we started partnering with them, I would say about 1.5 years ago, in terms of conferencing with their staff, talking about referrals and how we can kind of work more closely together. But I think that that's going to grow even more because we were moved into student affairs. So we are now in the same division, and that always makes that collaboration a little more robust. In terms of other tools and resources, I would say that it's primarily the one-on-one advising that moves the needle for students. A lot of our students with disabilities choose to meet regularly with an advisor. So I do quite a few weekly one-on-ones with students, as well as some of my other advisors. But we do a lot of coaching again around diversity pipelines and around disclosure, as well as basically all of the career readiness topics that students need to succeed. One initiative I'm trying to plan with, I'm working with a graduate student in the Center for Students with Disabilities, and I'm really excited about trying an initiative this year where we potentially figure out a way to target students with disabilities for specific student employment roles. So for me, I think I don't know why we wouldn't want to pilot this. If we're telling employers you should be creating these recruitment pipelines, I think it's important that we also create those at DePaul, and we target to get a larger pool for certain roles. So we're going to try and approach a couple different offices and see if for their student employment recruiting, if they would be interested in targeting students with disabilities. And along with that would be, how do you signal that? How do you accommodate students? How do you make students comfortable doing a disclosure? I think it would be a great case study for us to actually show to employers and to other campuses, other offices on campus around how this can work.
All right. So if a student is struggling to find like a job or an internship, how do they make an appointment with you guys?
So there's a couple ways. They can call the front desk of the Career Center. They can log into the chat. They don't actually log in. They can go into the chat on the Career Center website. They can log into their Handshake account. Every student at DePaul has a Handshake account. That's where they can schedule their own appointments. They can also walk into the Career Center if mobility is not an issue. I do have some students, for example, who are vision impaired and who would probably prefer to call versus come in. We are available to meet virtually as well as in person. So they have the option for that. And I have had students ask me to turn on transcription or closed captioning for Zoom conversations. So that's another accessibility issue that we're trying to make sure we all remember to do.
Where can they find this information at? Like, is it on the DePaul website? Is it on your social media platforms?
It's on the DePaul Career Center site. One thing I also wanted to mention is that all of our programming is recorded. So when we do an event, anyone who RSVPs to an event gets a recording of that event. And the reason we've been doing this is because students are very busy, and we also want to promote accessibility. So not only do they get a recording, they also get the slide deck, if that's like a better modality for them. And they also get all the related links that we reference in our conversation or in our event sent to those students directly. And students can also request that. It goes automatically to everyone who RSVPs, but they can also request that. The other thing I'll mention is that we have an asynchronous resume and LinkedIn profile review service that actually, rather than it just being a typed message, it's a video that one of our peers makes giving feedback to the student who submits their resume or LinkedIn profile. And that is done on a tool that offers transcription. So that's another accessibility piece in terms of making sure that students have a modality of conversation or feedback that fits their needs.
All right, and the last question is, how do you prepare the disabled learner who has unique needs who have unique needs from the able population for the interview, resume writing, and application?
So that's twofolded. So again, there's the student side of things where I coach students on particularly interview prep, right? I coach students, again, in a real one-on-one capacity, because it's different for everyone, around, do you disclose prior to the interview? Do you disclose during the interview? How do you talk about this? How do you ask relevant questions around accommodation and things like that? So there's the student side where we do a lot of one-on-one coaching. And again, that content library that I'm talking about will also help that be available to students 24/7. So like our handout on disclosure, the pluses and minuses and how it looks. But I think the other more impactful side of what we do is actually in our conversations with employers, because one of the things we've been trying to create, and this is in the content library proposal that we have right now, best practices for employers that we're trying to create. And those include things that are very low-hanging fruit for employers. So for example, when I'm hiring staff now, I send all my interview questions in advance. That is going to help a specific kind of student with disabilities, as well as a student from an underrepresented group who maybe doesn't have family that coaches them on how to do interviews. So that's like this I see the highest impact being from how we can help employers do a better job recruiting. Because what I see happening is I have a lot of students who are neurodiverse. They go into an interview, even when we prepped, with a certain level of anxiety. And I can coach them all day long on behavioral questions, et cetera. We can script answers and things like that. But at the end of the day, the traditional interview doesn't necessarily showcase the skills of that student for the particular role they're interested in. So for me, I really like the work we're doing with employers because that's going to make a bigger impact in the long run, because some of the old ways that folks have recruited are automatically going to put certain people at a disadvantage. And if we can make a change in that space around best practices, like sharing interview questions in advance, doing project-based job applications rather than like a behavioral interview or assessment, things like that, I think are going to help move the needle. But primarily in terms of how we help students prepare, it is through these one-on-one conversations. And that's why I would typically, if I'm working with a student with a disability, I'll probably schedule them weekly until they feel comfortable, navigating the process themselves, just because it's a very complicated one-on-one conversation and you can't do it in a half an hour usually.
All right, well, that seems to be all the interview questions. Thank you so much for interviewing.